Operation Kraai was the code name for a Dutch military offensive against the newly formed Republic of Indonesia in December 1948, January 1949. During this attack, the Dutch managed to capture the Indonesian Republic's temporary capital, Yogyakarta, and seized Indonesian leaders such as Republican President Sukarno, referred to by the Dutch as the second of two politional acties. It is known in Indonesia as Agresi Militer Belanda II. Background: the second politional actee was aimed at forcing the Republic to cooperate with the Dutch government in the implementation of the federalist policy, as stipulated in the Linggadjati Agreement. The purpose was to organize the new Indonesia as a federal state that would remain closely associated with the Netherlands. The Indonesians had breached the armistice signed following Operation Product. The Renville Agreement, as the armistice was called, stipulated the withdrawal of Indonesian forces from Dutch-occupied territory in exchange for ending the Dutch naval blockade, and this was indeed put into effect. After some time, however, the Indonesian military secretly returned and began guerrilla operations against the Dutch. By September 1948, the Dutch military command had succeeded in decoding the Republic's encrypted secret code, gaining crucial intelligence on Indonesian military and diplomatic strategies and plans. This allowed General Simon Hendrikspoor to counteract Republic actions on the battlefield and diplomatic stage. The Dutch were so confident of this advantage that they held a press conference in Jakarta 3 days prior to the actual attack. The Dutch also timed their attack to coordinate with plans by the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to dispatch a private plane to fly Sukarno and Hatta to Bukit Tinggi in West Sumatra, where they would head an emergency government. A Republican delegation led by Sukarno would then be flown to New York via New Delhi to advocate the Republic's cause in the United Nations General Assembly. Throughout the Indonesian national revolution, newly independent India had been sympathetic to the Republic cause, which they viewed as a struggle against Western imperialism. On the 18th of December, radio broadcasts in Jakarta reported that the Dutch High Commissioner Drive Beale was going to give an important speech the next day. This news did not reach Yogyakarta because the Dutch had cut the communication line. Meanwhile, General Spoor gave an instruction to begin a full-scale surprise attack against the Republic. The operation was code-named Operation Kraai. He timed the attack prior to coincide with Republic military exercises on the 19th of December, giving Dutch movements some temporary camouflage and enabling them to take the enemy by surprise. The attack was also launched without the prior knowledge of the UN Committee of Good Officers. Battle. First attack. The first attack began in the early hours of the 19th of December. At 4:30, Dutch aircraft took off from Bandung, heading for Yogyakarta via the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, the Dutch High Commissioner Beale announced that the Dutch were no longer bound by the Renville Agreement on radio. The operation began as the Dutch attacked major Indonesian centers in Java and Sumatra. At 5:30, Meguwo Airport and the radio station at military aircraft including Yogyakarta was bombed by the MLKNIL. The Republic fielded only 3 captured Japanese Mitsubishi Zeros, whereas the MLKNIL had several American-built P-40 Kitty Hawk and P-51 Mustang fighters, B-25 Mitchell bombers and 23 Douglas DC-3s carrying approximately 900 troops. Dutch paratroopers landed at Meguwo Airport, which was defended by 47 lightly armed Indonesian Air Force cadets who lacked anti-aircraft machine guns. In advance, dummies were landed by the Dutch to draw enemy fire, which enabled Dutch fighter planes to strafe the defenders. The skirmish lasted for 25 minutes, ending with the Dutch taking over Meguwo, killing 128 Republicans with no casualties. Having secured the airport perimeter by 6:45, the Dutch were able to land airborne troops in 2 successive waves and use Maguwo as an airhead for reinforcements from their main base in Semarang. At 8:30 a.m., General Spoor gave a radio broadcast ordering his forces to cross the Vainmuke line and capture Yogyakarta to purge the Republic of unreliable elements. The main aim of Operation Kraai was to quickly destroy the Tentara Nasional Indonesia, which General Spoor thought would desperately defend their capital. Thus, with Dutch superiority both in the air and on land, the Dutch army would easily execute a final and decisive victory upon the Indonesian army. However, most of the TNI had left Yogyakarta, defending western Yogyakarta's border from another Dutch military campaign. The Commander-General Nasution himself was on an inspection tour in East Java. The air attack found the Indonesians unprepared, and within hours the advancing Dutch army had quickly taken the airport, main road, bridge and strategic locations. General Sudirman's strategy was to avoid any major contact with the Dutch main army, thus saving the Indonesians from total defeat. He would prefer to lose territory but gain extra time to consolidate his army. Capture of Yogyakarta. After hearing of the surprise attack, Indonesian military commander General Sudirman broadcast Perintah Kilat via radios. He also requested Sukarno and other leaders to evacuate from Yogyakarta and join his guerrilla army. After a cabinet meeting, they refused and decided to stay in Yogyakarta and keep communicating with UN and KTN envoys. Sukarno also announced a plan for emergency government in Sumatra, in the event something happened to the Indonesian leadership in Yogyakarta. Meanwhile, 2,600 fully armed Dutch troops led by Colonel Dra. Van Langen had gathered in Maguwo, ready to capture Yogyakarta. On that same day, most of Yogyakarta fell into Dutch hands, with key targets like the Air Force and Chief of Staff headquarters razed by both Indonesian scorched earth tactics and Dutch bombing. Indonesian President Sukarno, Vice President Muhammad Hatta, and ex-Prime Minister Sultan Syahia were seized by the Dutch and subsequently exiled to Bangka. They let themselves be captured, hoping it would outrage international support. However, this action was later criticized among Indonesian military circles, which regarded it as an act of cowardice by the political leadership. Sultan Hamengkubuwono IX stayed at his palace in Yogyakarta and did not leave during the entire occupation. By the 20th of December, all remaining Republican troops in Yogyakarta had been withdrawn. All parts of Indonesia except Aceh and some cantons in Sumatra fell under Dutch control. Sudirman, who was suffering from tuberculosis, led the guerrillas from his sickbed. General A.H. Nasution, military commander of Java territories, declared military government in Java and initiated a new guerrilla tactic called Pertahanan Keamanan Rakyat Semester, transforming the Javan countryside into a guerrilla front with civilian support. Emergency government and guerrilla warfare. A previously planned emergency government was declared on the 19th of December. This was named Emergency Government of the Republic of Indonesia, based on Bukit Tinggi, West Sumatra, led by Syafruddin Prawiranegara. Sudirman radioed his immediate support for this government. Aftermath, international reaction and ceasefire. This attack was well publicized internationally, with many newspapers, including those in the United States, condemning Dutch attacks in their editorials. The United States threatened to suspend Marshall Plan aid to the Dutch. This included funds vital for Dutch post-World War II rebuilding that had so far totaled $1 billion. The Netherlands government had spent an amount equivalent to almost half of this funding their campaigns in Indonesia. The perception that American aid was being used to fund a senile and ineffectual imperialism encouraged many key voices in the United States. including those amongst the U.S. Republican Party, and from within American churches and NGOs to speak out in support of Indonesian independence. On 24 December, the UN Security Council called for the end of hostilities. In January 1949, it passed a resolution demanding the reinstatement of the Republican government. The Dutch had achieved most of their objectives and announced a ceasefire in Java on 31 December and on 5 January in Sumatra. The guerrilla war nonetheless continued. Hostilities eventually ended on 7 May with the signing of the Rome-Van Rooyen Agreement.